Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with friends, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank you.
Hello. Today I'm going to be looking at two very similar knives. I mean, if you're looking at them from here, they look nearly identical. However, this one is $15 to $20 less than this one. And before you start saying, well, this is just a Chinese knockoff of that, no, this knife is also made in USA, same as this knife, and both of them are made by the Ontario Knife Company. And both of them look like an Air Force survival knife until close inspection. This one is slightly different. This one is usually listed as the 499 mod, MOD, whereas this one is just your basic 499. So why do you want to spend $15 or $20 more for this one? Or should you just go ahead and spend $15 or $20 less for this one? So what I plan on doing is looking at both knives, inspecting both knives, and then it's really up to you to decide which one you think is the better knife for you. Do you really want to spend $15 or $20 more for the one that says 499, or are you happy spending $15 or $20 less and getting the 499 MOD? Okay, now before we even get started, you notice right away that this one has much lighter colored handle and a much lighter colored sheath. I will tell you right now that they both come looking like this. Matter of fact, this one looks a little bit better than the way they both come. The handle on this one, I've already sanded this handle down a little bit. They come with a very rough handle, and you really have to kind of sand it down to get going with it. And the leather sheath is usually about this shade of tan. Matter of fact, I bought this one. This is the 499 mod. I bought this one and another 499 at the same time, and these sheaths look nearly identical. There was only one minor difference that you would see on the back of this sheath when you first get it. And well, there's actually three significant differences to this sheath versus this sheath, but they both come the same color. So let's start with the sheath. Pull the knife to the side. Okay, first of all, this sheath is an older sheath. This one came out in 2008, and if you notice, it has the government sticker on the back here, giving the national stock number and all that other stuff. The newer versions of this knife by Ontario may or may not have the government sticker on the back. However, when this sheath shows up, you're going to have this little sticker right here that is going to say sheath made in China or something like that. Only the sheath is made in China. And what I can tell you about the sheath that is different than the one you're going to find on the 499, this is just riveted in place. This sheath is both riveted and stitched in place, which means that this does not move around nearly as much and is more secure. So if you want to get this sheath to match, you're going to have to basically go and do some sewing, or you're going to need to punch a hole in there and somehow get that riveted back down so that this part does not move, because that's going to annoy the crap out of you. But that is really the more problematic problem with this sheath than the little made in China sticker on the back. Otherwise, I did some measuring. The thickness of the leather is the same and everything else. However, this leather is not nearly as pliable as this leather. This leather, you can feel it. It is a better quality leather. It feels thicker, though it's the same thickness, but it's much more pliable, bends a lot easier, and I got a feeling it probably will take dye better than this one does. This one, I have not attempted to dye it yet. I will do that later when I work on this a little bit more and tell you more about the knife in general once I do some more work on it. I did not want to do everything to this knife before doing this video, I want to show you a before and after picture of it. One other thing I noticed with this is the sharpening stone. This one comes wrapped in plastic. The one on the 499 did not come wrapped in plastic. Now this is an older one, and the stone is a little bit thicker, not much thicker, and it's almost identical in size. However, I got a different 499. This one, like I said, is from 2008. I got one from 2012, and the stone for the 2012 was slightly smaller than the stone that comes with the made in China one. The stone will fit in either pouch though. It'll fit in the sheath that's made in China. It will also fit in the American made sheath. But for right now, the stone made in China seems to be just slightly larger than the current stone that is made in the USA. So something else to consider with this. You got a slightly larger stone. I have not used it. As you can tell, it's still wrapped in plastic, so I do not know the quality of the stone. Riveting, if you notice the riveting in the metal, not the most accurate, not the most exact. This one, definitely a little bit better, and you notice it's actual rivets. This one here, I don't know how this is riveted or what, but it is slightly different, so you will see a little bit difference on it. The thickness of the metal, though, seems to be about the same. So that's really the differences in the sheath. This one is a little stiffer. It's made in China. The quality of the leather isn't quite as good, and the most annoying part is this thing spins around. So that's one of the places where they save money, because the 499 mod goes for around $30 to $38. The 499 starts around $45 and can go up as high as $55-$60 depending on what dealer you're going to. But there's the difference in price, you know. $33, $45 to $46. I mean, I got a really good deal on one for $45, but they tend to usually go for around $50 or so. Let's move on to the knives. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the pommel here. This is on the 499 mod. Notice how the tang goes all the way through. The nice rectangular tang comes all the way through, and then it looks like it's pinged and welded in place. And then what you may not be able to see here, if I can get the lighting to hit it right, might have to take some pictures. You can see a noticeable lip around the edges here, like they didn't hit it with the grinding wheel quite right. So there's just a little bit of a lip coming all the way around on the pommel. The other thing you will see is where it says Ontario here. It has the date, but the date is half off. It's so low that you're only seeing half of it. It says 311 there, but it's kind of low, and you're not quite getting all of the date on there. It's actually missing part of the hexagon head there. The next thing you'll notice, if you can see it there, notice how it is slightly off. I might have to take photos of a lot of this stuff, but it's just slightly off. It's like a 1/16 of an inch off the hex head getting mounted into here. And if you notice the transition of the leather, it's not completely clear and clean. There's definitely a bump here, and then it goes into it. It doesn't just kind of transition into it. So you'll see it a little bit clearer on here. Now, I have started sanding on that, but the sanding is not what makes this transition in so well. See how much better the transition is here. The way it is just kind of, the leather is fit correctly into there. And if you notice also, it is much better center. There is a washer there, and then you can definitely see it. It's definitely off compared to this one. The other thing is the date is clearly marked, and it's better centered. So you can definitely see the birth date on this knife. It says 708. It's very clear, and you can also see the tang passing all the way through. It's also that lip is missing there. They have ground this down much better. I see one little spot here where the lip was missed, but this one, it goes all the way around where they kind of missed it, and you're going to have to basically grind it down yourself to get it smoothed out. Now, like I mentioned, this one started off, the leather started off just about as rough as this one, but the transition here was much better. And so what I ended up doing is I hit it with 200 grit, 400 grit, 1000 grit sandpaper, and then I polished it up with Cordova, what's the one, Kiwi shoe polish, just Cordova, Cordovidian, whatever, the one that begins with a C and is kind of red brown. I used that on there, and then a lot of oil to get it nice and treated, because the leather is a little bit dry when these knives come, no matter what. So I'm assuming I will be able to get this handle to look close to this way, but there's no way I'm going to be able to fix the fact that the pommel is slightly off center. It's almost like these knives began life as a factory second, and they listed it as a 499 mod so that they could sell them. That's almost the way it looks, and that might be why they're $15, $20 cheaper. Let's move on to the blade. Now, before I say anything again, this blade began life with a very thick black phosphate coating on it, and they do that for a reason. It's so that the knife isn't going to rust. I mean, it was about as thick as you see here on the back here. I did not take it off of here yet. I should probably. And the reason they do that, though, is these knives are going to be sitting around in an emergency pack for years on end, possibly, so the black phosphate coating protects the blade and prevents it from rusting and everything. Once you take it off, then you got to start taking care of the knife as if it was a 1095 carbon steel blade, which is what it is. So I've taken off most of the the black phosphate coating on this, and I've used it. I've also sharpened it and everything else. Now you've got a nice, the top swedge here is sharp, and obviously the bottom blade can get razor sharp depending on how well you can sharpen. You'll also notice that you've got the saw going along the blade here. This one is from 2008, and I suspect that this blade might have come from the old Camillus factory, because it is slightly different than the Ontario blades that you find in as early as 2012, where the sawback only goes to about here. This portion here, about an inch back, is not a sawback. It is plain, like you see on this one here. Notice how you have a much longer area there without a saw, and that is typical of a lot of the Ontario knives. The earlier ones, like I say, have the saw come almost all the way out to the sharpened swedge on the blade. That is the difference. Now, also, I'm not trying to say, hey, this is a Camillus blade. I do not know for sure. This could very well be an Ontario blade as well. They may have just decided to change that sometime around 2009, 2010, something like that, to a different type blade with a little more space up here. I don't know. And also, even if this is a Camillus blade, it's really the tempering and the heat treating and everything is the exact same as you would get on one of the Ontario knives. They're using the exact same 1095 carbon steel blanks. So blade steel, either one of them is going to be the same. It's just where it may have come from. They might have bought an old stock of Camillus blanks, and that's why this blade might look different than most of the Ontario blades look. The other thing you will see here, though, is right here. The big finger groove, that is missing on the 499 mod. There is absolutely no finger groove there. Now this is hollow ground down here. Actually feels more like a flat grind, and It is pretty much centered as best I can see, but it feels like it's more of a flat grind instead of a hollow grind. Yeah, this is definitely more of a hollow grind going on. And the other thing that you will notice that is significantly different, this is not sharpened at all. The swedge, there is no real swedge. Notice the difference. You can see it right away. That is truly the major difference. The cross guards are identical, exactly the same cross guard, same exact shape and everything. But that's where your major difference comes in these two knives, is the blade. The length is exactly the same, but you do not have the finger groove or the fuller, whichever we want to call it. That is missing, and you do not have a sharpened swedge, nor do you have the ability to even attempt to sharpen that swedge without doing some major work on it. And that, I think, is where they really save money on these knives, is in the work that they do on the blade. This probably costs quite a bit of money to do, as well as this swedge up here. So which is the knife that is better for you? Really, you got to remember, this one's like $30 to $38. This one, you might be lucky to get it for $45, but more likely in the $50 to $50 range. So this one's going to cost you usually at least $15 less. They come clam packed. You can find them at Walmart, you can find them at Cabela's, you can find them just about anywhere. They're going to be a little trickier to find. These are like all over the place these days, the $4.99 mod. But like I said, they do seem to be a little bit like a factory second to the actual $4.99. The other thing is this has the $4.99 mod has a sheath that is made in China. But here's the thing. If you're just looking for a good camp knife, or you're just buying a camp knife for, a youngster, their first camp knife, and you thought they'll really like something like this, they're looking for a decent survival type knife, this might be the one to just go ahead and grab them. First of all, because this does not have the sharpened swedge up here, this is probably legal to carry in more places than this one is, because in many places the fact that you have a sharpened swedge up here, this is immediately considered a double-edged weapon, even though it is not a completely edged weapon. And some places will not worry about the saw so much as long as this swedge is not sharpenable. You might also like the fact that the thumb groove is missing in here. Maybe that's something you don't like. Maybe you think it weakens the blade. So all of that plays into it also. So depending on what you're doing, also, $15 is $15. You can do a lot with $15. So really, which one is best is really up to you, for which one is best for you. I know I would much rather have this one because it's closer to the original. This is the original. This is the Army and the Air Force survival knife. This is the one that was used from 1957 all the way to 2003 before the ASEC took over. So that's why I would want this one. But when you're talking about functionality, this one's going to get the job done too. And it's $15, and that's $15. That's something. $15 for a lot of people is not something to sneeze at. So we'll see how this looks after I do a little work on it, cleaning it up and everything, and see what it can look like in a later video. But I just wanted to really point out the differences between these two knives in this video. Hopefully that will help you make your decision if you're looking at buying one of these knives. And also, it answers that question, why is this knife $15 or $20 less than this knife?
So let's just recap real quick. The $4.99 and the $4.99 mod are both using the exact same blade stock. It is a 1095 carbon steel blade with the sawtooth on the back. It is hardened to a 54 to 56 HRC. So the Rockwell testing on both blades are exactly the same. As for the handles, as far as I can tell, they're using the same leather washers, except it seems like there's a little bit more attention to detail on the 499 compared to the 499 mod when it comes to assembling the handle. So I guess their standards aren't quite as high on the 499 mod as they are on the 499. Where Ontario went to save money on the 499 mod was, number one, having the sheath produced in China instead of in the United States. So that saves significant money. And then the rest of the money is saved on the tooling on the blade blank. So you are losing that finger groove and you are losing the sharpened swedge on the 499 mod. And that is really where you see the difference in the knife, and that is also probably where they save most of the money, because it takes a little bit of tooling to get all of those little features in there, and that makes a difference in the knife. Now, as I mentioned, I measured this knife 4 ways to Sunday, and everything measures out identical with the exception of the weight. And the reason the weight is different is because there's less tooling done on the 499 mod, and that means there's more blade stock there, so the knife is actually a little bit heavier than the 499 because, well, you don't have that lightning fuller across the top of the blade, and also that swedge is much thicker, so that's where the weight comes in on the 499 mod. That's also going to change the balance of the knife. Something to consider. So what you have in the 499 mod is a knife that is slightly less finished than the 499, but you have a significant saving of about $15. That's where you're at. I hope that helps you in your purchasing decisions if you're looking at picking up either of these knives. Thank you for visiting Knife Chats. I hope you enjoyed your time here. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel and ringing that notification bell so that you will be notified when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. See you soon.